Hello everybody, welcome to another Salem 2 video. Today we're going to be talking about how the apocalypse should be reworked into neutral killings. This is something that I kind of been wanting for a while because I think that having more NKs would make the game a lot more fun, and the apocalypse kind of already acts solo without the 4 horsemen modifier, but this is to go into more depth with the idea, and there's going to be a couple of changes that you'll notice without the modifier. So first off, the current state of Apocalypse. The Apocalypse are currently a faction-based group of roles, so they will all work together. However, that's only under the 4 Horsemen modifier. However, this modifier is used in pretty much every single list where multiple horsemen can spawn, so obviously there's still like a intent to make them work as a faction, which I think is a terrible idea because they simply don't work that well together. Half of the time when you're playing with like 4 horsemen, it's just like one of these roles is just going to carry you to the end, while the other just sit back and do nothing. Like usually either famine gives you the win, death gives you the win, pestilence or war, but they never really work together from what I've seen, at least in my personal experience. So now on to the Apocalypse problem as they are currently. So Apocalypse's first major problem is the fact that they lack kill power early game without Berserker. This can be a huge issue as first off, you can just spawn without Berserker and then you're just kind of screwed. But even if you do have a Berserker, you don't have defense instantly, so Coven can just find Berserker and kill them. So the fact that Apocalypse is so heavily reliant on one role to get them through the early game is bad for the game, especially since they're supposed to be working as a faction. If Apocalypse had more kill power, they can kind of like even out Coven in case Coven gets like really overpowered. But the fact that once Berserker is gone, like Coven can just pick you off one by one because you're just way too slow. And this same can be said for Town to some extent, but with Town you're kind of like staying hidden, I guess, but it's still not ideal. Now, there are some ways to fix this. Mainly, you can give Apocalypse roles power by increasing their kill power for the early game. Or you can also make them function like a proper NK with defense by default. Now, the problem with giving all the Apocalypse roles like early game kill power is if you do keep them as a faction, then obviously they're going to be very overpowered and then they're just going to be really bad for the Coven, so it's like the exact opposite problem. However, if you make them NK, you don't necessarily have to increase their kill power. You just gotta make sure that they're able to balance out the game and get to the end game and then work it out from there, because NKs versus Town, like, you don't have to worry about that because Coven's going to take care of Town for you for the most part, while you just kind of, you either speed up Coven or you hinder Coven, balance it out for the most part, which I think will work better than early game kill power. The next decision, now that we know Apocalypse should be NK, is whether or not they should be mutually exclusive or if multiple can spawn in a game. This is more a personal opinion, but I think allowing multiple Apocalypse roles to spawn in, but having it so that they have to fight against each other is a fun concept. So instead of Berserker, Baker, Soul Collector, and Plaguebearer winning together, each role needs to win on their own, killing the other Apocalypse roles in order to win. Having this sort of mechanic can make modes like All Any and Custom be more chaotic, while not having to deal with multiple Apocalypse roles having to transform at the same time, rendering the game unwinnable for anyone because all the Apocalypse would work together and you can't do anything about it, which sucks. So we established that the Apocalypse should be NK and that they should work against each other. However, with this, there is going to be some changes needed for some of these roles. Like obviously Baker being solo isn't going to work as well as Berserker being solo. So first off, what are the changes? So first off, Berserker in War. I think this role already works perfectly. It's based off Juggernaut, which was a 2S1 neutral killing. So Berserker in War basically kind of functions as an NK already, so I'm just going to keep it at that. Plaguebearer and Pestilence is next. This role is another I think already works well enough on its own, and I wouldn't be mad if it didn't change. However, I do think it should get a buff to make it more equal in power level 2 War. The Plaguebearer role is already good as is able to gather tons of information with the tracking ability, and the plague spreading goes at a good speed in most games. So for Plague Bearer, I think it's already perfect, no changes are needed. Pestilence, however, is very underwhelming. Pestilence's main problem is due to how easy it is to counter by not visiting. People not visiting during Pestilence basically makes the role a serial killer that can't kill early game, which is just very disappointing. So as a buff to Pestilence, if you're a role that can visit during Pestilence and you choose not to, you'll instead visit a random person giving them Pestilence. With this change, people are forced to visit and it'll make it so Pestilence gets more than 1 kill per night, helping it in the kill power department without changing the role itself that much. Third is Soul Collector and Death. This role is currently in a decent place, but because I want to make these more NK-like, Soul Collector and Death will be changing. First off, with Soul Collector, the main thing I want to change is lowering the amount of souls needed to transform. This is primarily due to my wanting to change Death into something that isn't just an instant move. So Soul Collector will only need 5 souls, with Reach still making people sus and still staying throughout the entire game. This method means Death will pop out between days 4 and 6 guaranteed depending on how well they do, so Death will usually pop out more early. However, it can still take some time, so just depending on how well you do. Death at this point is also changing to no longer be an instant nuke like I said before. The reason I want to do this is because most NKs benefit from the fact they aren't the main threat. Usually Town wants to get Coven before a solo evil role. However, with Death, everybody wants Death out because otherwise they lose. This causes the evils to be open about being Coven or other NKs, and quickly narrowing down the possible Death suspects to just weak countings and Death itself, which happening late in the game usually makes Death stick out way too easily. So the new idea is Death will instead become a Shroud-like role, with 2 kills guaranteed each night. Basically how this will work is Death targets 2 players and kills them. However, Death will also kill the person that the original targets visit. So if Death gets extra lucky, they can kill up to 4 people in one night. However, this raises one issue with Death being way too easy to out. Players keep track of who Death visits and who those people visit. So in order to combat this problem, Death will be given a cautious-like ability, which makes it so they only kill 1 person per target regardless of visits. Along with this, Death will also destroy all last wills. By having both of these, it allows Death more freedom in deciding what to do without the worry of getting outed by last wills or people planning ahead of time who they'll visit, because none of the information is going to be 100% correct depending on what Death decides. The last Apocalypse role is Baker and Famine. Now this role is the one in most need of, assuming it's becoming solo now. So first off is changing how Baker works. Baker's main issue is the fact that it's the only Apocalypse role that can lose progress towards it transforming, setting it back heavily. I want to overhaul Baker for this reason and instead give it a Berserker style transformation where it instead needs to kill 3 people in order to transform. My idea is to give Baker the option to steal someone's bread. Stealing someone's bread will cause them to die the next night to a powerful attack. Basically, this will work like a poisoner in the fact that it's a delayed kill. However, the main difference is if any healing roll protects the target, then the target won't die that night, but they'll instead need a healing roll on them every night to prevent starvation. So once you steal someone's bread, they'll be dealt a powerful attack every night until you die. Baker will need to kill off 3 people with this method in order to transform into Famine. Once Famine, you'll still starve people, reducing everyone's bread supply by 1 each night and choosing 1 person to kill directly, taking away all their bread, dealing an unstoppable attack. Along with this, once Famine comes, anyone you start before becoming Famine that's still alive due to healing will instantly die that night if you're still alive. Now, another mechanic I want to change about Famine is making it have a pestilence-like killing. So anyone visiting people during a famine is allowed to steal bread from other players, causing that person to die faster, while also allowing yourself to live longer. So player A and B both start with free bread, and famine reduces player A and B to 2 bread. However, player B will visit player A, stealing their bread, making it so player B will have 3 bread while player A only has 1 bread. Next night, player A will have 0 bread and die, while player B will go down to 2 bread. So that's going to be the main change I'm going to be making to Baker. So it will increase his kill power and also not make it so weak, because currently Baker, you don't even kill people once you reach famine, because you only make them die slightly faster by taking away 1 bread. This will change it so, you take all the bread, while also kind of making an interesting mechanic where you can steal other people's bread too, as like the other roles. We got the new version of the rules, but a problem does remain in the fact that if all 4 do spawn and transform, they'll be unable to kill each other, causing the game to most likely end in a town loss, as Apocalypse roles can only die to hanging. So, in order to combat this, each Apocalypse attack will be upgraded to Golly, which will allow them to kill other Apocalypse roles if they just so happen to spawn, while keeping immunity from everything else. In order to balance out the Golly attacks, only Wars and Death's direct attacks will be Golly attacks. Anything affected by rampages or visits will instead be given a unstoppable attack. As for Pestilence and Famine, I think their direct attacks should be Golly, while their more passive abilities should just take longer to affect other Transform Apocalypse. Basically, Transform Apoc will have 4 bread to start out with, while also need 4 stacks of Pestilence to die. Now that we got the NK style of Apocalypse all figured out, I know some people are going to still want to play 4 Horsemen and have them all work together as a team. Due to that, the 4 Horsemen modifier will still exist, allowing for the Apocalypse to still work as a team if you desire. However, now if a list doesn't have the modifier, it will no longer count the Apocalypse rolls to 1 per game, instead of allowing all 4 to spawn and to have them like compete against each other and needing to kill each other in order to win if you do not have the modifier. Anyways, that's it for this video. If you got suggestions on how to make changes to these rules, I would love to hear them. These are just my ideas I came up with, and there might be some better versions, but I enjoyed the rules I made. Anyways, if you enjoyed the video, please subscribe, and bye!